Well, so I'll kick things straight off then, Dave. Looking at that 2004-5 season, even from, I suppose, day one of pre-season, things probably weren't the same as what they'd been the previous 5 years. You'd been in the role of head physio at Liverpool Football Club, of course, with Rafa Benitez coming in and replacing Gerard Houllier as manager.
Yeah, very different overnight, but an interesting change. You know, the way he worked was different to Gerard, but he got the players that were good enough, and everybody seemed to take everything on board. And we just sort of worked hard every day, and success is a consequence, as they say. It's not a result.
No, and I suppose for you that season, you wouldn't know then in the summer of 2004 just how busy you'd be that season, because I suppose even from day one, it was there were constantly players in your physio room needing treatment, and there were a fair few lengthy injuries through the course of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, people always ask me what's my biggest memory of the actual final. And I can honestly say now my biggest memory was being absolutely shattered before the game. It was just one hell of a long season. But as it turned out, it was worth every single minute of it. And it didn't finish then, obviously, because Carragher got his injury in the game. And when we came back, he opened the top bus around Liverpool, and then up at 4 a.m. to take Carragher for surgery on his groin. So it was a few days after the final that we slowly began to sort of wind down a bit.
I think a lot of people actually within that season, of course, Istanbul is the overriding memory. But I think aside from that, reaching the League Cup final, but a number of those injuries, there were big injuries through the course of the season. Obviously, Djibril Cissé having arrived, had that horrific broken leg at Blackburn Rovers. Xabi Alonso on New Year's Day, wasn't it, against Chelsea, broke his ankle, I think it was, in attack with Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard as well through the course of the season, especially through that group stage. You were constantly having to patch him up and even make sure he was there for the Olympiacos game.
Exactly, that was some game as well. But the thing that people don't realise now as well is there was only two of us. There was me and another physio, and that was it. We had a masseur as well, soft tissue injury, but that was our medical team then. Now you're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9 medical staff. We had two of us to do everything from the acute stuff right the way through and cover the games, all the travel. It was good fun, but it was hard work, really was, but enjoyable.
It certainly sounds like you had that medal at the end of the season, that's for sure.
It was a fun season, but worth it, well worth it.
What sort of stage did you sort of start thinking through the course of that season? Actually, we've got something special here. Of course, there'd been all that talk about Steven Gerrard leaving, Michael Owen had already gone, new manager in place. But the team, as the season went on, just seemed to foster that team spirit and that never say die attitude, which of course was so prevalent in the final.
Yeah, when you look at the lineup for the actual final against Milan, it's not a fantastic lineup. It's not a great set of individual players, but collectively we were as strong as anyone, and mentally we were as strong as anyone. And I think that's what got us through. You know, you come to the half time, you're 3-0 down against Milan in the final. There's come back from that. But collectively, we all did it, and Rafa had got a nice, quiet way of going about his team talk and what he said, how he said things. Stevie G, Carragher, unbelievable characters. They got the crowd on our side, got the players together, and then little twists of luck, fate, decisions change the game. And 6 minutes of madness later, you're back in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 minutes of madness. Can see on your back wall there the poster with the Istanbul with the two club crests there as well. But in terms of that half-time team talk, it's something. Pardon?
I say I got that all signed as well. I asked permission to take it off the wall, and I've got that as my memento. But I've got it all signed by all the players and staff.
That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and all the memories that come with it. But that halftime team talk is something that's fabled now. It's something that a lot of people have asked the questions and spoken about it. Wanted to ask you about it because, of course, we know the incident of Djimi Traoré was going to be substituted. Steve Finnan then had this injury. And I suppose you're the man who has to break it to Rafa whilst his mind scrambled trying to work out the tactical plan. Gaffer, Steve Finnan can't continue.
Yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, we came in at half-time. The place was just dead. It was very quiet for probably only a couple of minutes, but it seemed like about 30, 40 minutes. Steve then said his thigh was sore, so we get him on the table, have a look, assess him. And obviously, in this time, people are starting to talk, and Rafa's saying his bits. Sends Jimmy into the shower. He was going to make the change. I don't know if Jimmy actually got into the shower or if he was just getting ready to go in the shower. And it was quite obvious Steve wasn't going to be able to finish the game in the condition he was in. So I don't think he spoke to me since, by the way, as well. We had to just go and speak to Rafa. I said, look, he's got a problem with his thigh. He's not going to be able to finish the 90 minutes. It's your decision if you want to change him or not. But he won't last the 90 minutes. So we said, right, we'll change it. Get Jimmy back out of the showers. Didier Man, you're going on. And look, it all worked, apart from Steve. But he got a winner's medal out of it, so he can't be too unhappy.
No, certainly not. And I just wondered, how difficult is that? You obviously, through the course of your career, plenty of times would have offered that advice to managers, and I'm sure a few of them would have barked back at you and said, you stick to your job, I'll do mine, I'll put the player back out if I want to. But how difficult in that pressure environment is it to have to go up to the manager and say, look, I know you've got this plan, but you're going to have to consider this?
I think you've got to use your experience and things that you've done in the past, how you've dealt with it, how you put it over to the manager, how you put it over to the player as well. But it's just using your experience. You're there to do a job, and you've got to take your professional head and your personal head completely aside and just make a professional decision for the benefit of the whole team, not just for one player. And luckily, Rafa was very, very good at understanding things like that. And I've seen him since when he was up at Newcastle. I've gone up to a few games, and he still talks about it very, very fondly. And he said, if he hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have put Didi on. We may not have won it. So he's a sensible manager in that way. So he took it in the right way, but it's just experience, I think.
So you're telling us you're the man to thank for the miracle of Istanbul?
I wish. No. Not if you ask Steve Finnan, no.
No, I bet not. But in terms of all of sort of the things that do come together with all of that, as you said before, now we see when clubs win trophies, and I seem to remember Manchester City over the last 2 years, the bundles and bundles of backroom staff and sports scientists, physiotherapists they have. You said before there were only two of you, so you guys must have really sort of had your hands full running back and forth, doing absolutely everything.
It is everything. Say there was two physios, we had a doctor and we had a soft tissue therapist, and that was it. So we were covering games, reserve games still as well. Every training session, every game we were travelling, you'd still got injuries back that you were looking after long term, which my sort of colleague looked after there. So it was a full-time job, really was. It was hard work, and we tried to get more staff, but at the time it wasn't possible. When you look now, 7, 8 physios, it's a lot easier and you can get more work done, more quality work. I do remember one, again, it was Steve Finnan. I was out, we were running with Michael Owen and Steve Finnan just around Melbourne, both trying to get back to fitness. And literally about 20 minutes into the run, Michael said, no, I said, I can still feel something. I'm not right. So you're running with two players, one Michael Owen, one Steve Finnan. It's not one big player, one little player by any means, but I have to go in with Michael because I'm the only one that could see him and treat him there. So I said to Steve, you carry on running for another 10 minutes, which is what we were doing with the set plan, and then come in and we'll look at you from there. He came in 10 minutes later with a raging hump. You leave me alone, running on my own. I don't have anybody running with me. You think he's more important than me? And it was, I love Steve Finnan to bits, by the way, just always seems to be him. But it was difficult. You have to make a decision which was your priority. So it was awkward.
No, I bet it was. But in terms of the Istanbul final, then, of course, Harry Kewell is selected for the final. Within the first half of the first half, he has to go off with the injury.
Yeah.
I suppose for you as well as a physio, helping players make sure they are fit for the game, because, of course, Harry Kewell had an injury hit time during his time at Liverpool, helping him be prepared for that game. You have that human side of things, that psychological side of things, working with the player, making sure they're going to be ready for the big match. To then see, as you say, his groin go, and that pure devastation and upset that it causes of the player having to come off in a major final like that.
Yeah. But this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how you put things over to the manager. Harry, I think, I'm sure he won't mind me saying it now, but he wasn't fit for the final. And as a medical team, we voiced that opinion to the manager. We voiced it to the player in hopefully the right way. And it proved that he wasn't fully fit, but Rafa wanted to play him in that final. You know, it was the last game of the season. It's a throw your dice type event. And the manager wanted to play him. So we just backed the manager 100%. The player was happy with, our opinion, the Rafa's opinion. He wanted to play, obviously. So it was a case of allowing him to play safely or sensibly. He didn't get through it. And then, say, 2 days later, we're in the surgery getting his groin repaired.
We go from that moment, of course, in the first half to, you mentioned after half-time, 6 minutes of madness, Liverpool back on level terms. You then get to extra time in the game, and you've got 11 players out there. Last game of the season, played all of these games, been to the final of the League Cup. Of course, they've been through this arduous run within the Champions League. And you've got the likes of Jamie Carragher hobbling around basically on one leg, just making sure they get over the line.
I don't think he'd even got one good leg at that point, to be honest. I've still got a photograph on my phone of somebody had taken a photo of Jamie flat on his back, me stretching his legs out when he'd gone down with cramp. And then literally after the pens, he'd sprinted 120 yards down the pitch to celebrate, and everything's forgotten. But it's a mental thing as much as anything then. You've got that will to win. And I think we had that collectively as a group of players. And we were just stronger than them. I think that 6 minutes completely knocked the stuffing out of them. We got through mentally at the end of it.
And being on the bench, of course, as you had been in the treble winning season, your time at the club must have been absolutely fantastic, having a front row seat to seeing all of this success that Liverpool had, whether it be in Europe or whether it, of course, be in those domestic cups as well.
Yeah, when I look back now, it's absolutely fantastic and, an unbelievable time at the club. It was my best part of my career by far. But at the time, you're doing a job and you don't think about it. I don't watch, even now, I don't watch the football match that's going ahead. You're watching 3, 4, 5 seconds behind the game to see if there's an injury, if there's a problem, what mechanism of injury it could be. So you don't actually watch the game of football. There's many a time people say to me afterwards, "What about that? Did you see that move?" I was like, "No, I didn't," because you watch from a different perspective. And I think that's what it's all about. The medical staff do their job, the coaching staff do their job, the players do their job. And when it all comes together, you've always got a chance then.
How much did it mean for you as well, obviously, seeing the likes of Jamie Carragher, Steven Gerrard play such a crucial role, not just be part of the team, but they were the two linchpins of that side. You, of course, had been at the club whilst they'd been coming through as young lads, and all of a sudden you got to see them and witness them conquering Europe.
I don't think there can be a better feeling. It's difficult to put into words. They're both fantastic lads. Great to see them going on. If I'm honest, I thought Jamie Carragher would have been the manager and Stevie would have been a manager, but I think Jamie would have been first, and he's proved me wrong on that. Both doing great in their careers now. But I always remember with Carragher especially, if Gerard Houllier or Rafa, when he came in, didn't know anything about a particular player anywhere in the world, they would go to Jamie to ask him for the answers, and he would just rattle them off. His knowledge was fantastic. But just great lads, great characters, and say proper scousers that you want as your core of your team. And they led the foreign lads, especially. They led them into the Liverpool way, which is special all over the world anyway.
And I suppose ever so evident in that final, because you mentioned going in at how flat it was at 3-0 down. I think Jamie Carragher has spoken a number of times saying nobody actually did believe perhaps it was possible, but as soon as they got that sniff of blood of the AC Milan side, they weren't going to let it go.
Exactly. And again, in the half time, I don't know if mine's right, but my recollection of the half time was coming in, it being deadly quiet. And the first two voices you hear are Jamie Carragher and Steven Gerrard talking to each other. And then it gets a bit more, not heated, but a bit louder. A few more people join in. And then Rafa comes in and says his piece. But the one thing I can remember was Jamie saying, we've got to do it for them. Listen to them. And you could just hear the crowd outside. I've got all goose pimples now. You can hear the crowd outside singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and it was an amazing second half. Incredible.
It does. It just defies belief. But moving on to the present day, then, Dave, and chatting about your role now. You're working with Plymouth Argyle. The League Two season, of course, has been officially confirmed as being finished. You're waiting on centre hooks to see if that's going to mean that you're going to get a promotion. But we are obviously in awkward and uncertain times.
Yeah, definitely. It's very, very difficult at the moment. I think for the lower leagues, it's difficult medically, but difficult financially for the clubs as well. You know, it's well documented that to put football games on, it's an expensive business, and if you've got no revenue coming in from crowds, it's going to put a lot of stress on the owners of the football clubs. Medically, obviously, you've got to look at the safety of the players. And up until recently, I don't think they had a fair voice as a group of players. I think now that's come to the foreground a bit, which is a good thing, because they're the ones that are on the pitch playing the game. And I've never yet seen a game of football with no contact. So, you know, you've got to be safe for the players to play, and safe and for the staff to work around them as well.
Yeah, we're hearing we've read, I think it's probably fair to say, a few balmy things of players having to look away when they do tackles, and goalkeepers not being able to shout this, that and the other. It's not going to be feasible. But of course, there have been plenty of discussions right at the top end of the game in the Premier League of how and when it could be safe for football to return, and just how that could go about. We're sort of hearing from different reports and whatnot, the government, obviously, because football's a massive industry, not just a sport that people are invested in emotionally, but that whole industry. The government wants it back as soon as possible. But I suppose, and you'll tell us from a professional point of view, that actually there is a reason why the clubs will want to hold off for a few extra weeks if they can, to make sure everything conditioning is right for a return.
Exactly. You know, I know it's a big industry. I know there's a lot of money involved in it, but it's people's lives. And, you know, you've got people like Steve Bruce, Nigel Pearson coming out and saying if there's one fatality, it'll kill the game. And it'll have a massive impact on the game down the line. So for me, I think it's got to be, initially, it's got to keep it as simple as we can. It's got to be safe for the players to return. Fitness-wise, if you think they've had, 8 weeks, 9 weeks off now, that's longer than normal summer by a long way. They're going to need a good, for me, 4, 5, 6 weeks even to get fit enough to play the game. And, you know, they're talking about the middle of June. I don't think, realistically, that's enough time. I know Raheem Sterling's come out. He's one of the voices that's prominent in it. Come out and voiced his opinion, said it's not long enough. I totally agree. I think they've got to be, to reduce the risk of injuries, they've got to be fit enough to start. And if they're starting in small groups, they can only do a certain amount. Then bigger groups, it's just a massive risk. That does it really need to take place?
No, and I suppose there's massive squads that Premier League clubs have now, whether it be under 23s as well, in terms of supplementing things. But one thing, sort of as you mentioned there, in terms of even having that 5-6 week pre-season you would have, of course, there's not going to be any friendlies. I know the club can put behind closed door games on themselves, but those friendly games, I suppose, even with smaller crowds there, help build that fitness that players have before they return.
Massively, yeah. It's different. When you play an in-house game, 11v11, it's a training session. You play a friendly game, it's still a training session, but it's a game. And there is a different mentality to it, and it pushes you towards getting ready for that initial game that you really, really need. I just hope we don't get to the situation where and I don't think anybody's actually come out and said this yet, but certainly for Liverpool, for mine, it's still my club. If they play 2 games, win those 2 games, they've won the league. It doesn't get to a point where they say, right, we're going to finish now. Obviously, the bottom clubs have got the relegation. It's a lot more important for them financially as well. So I think it's just a really difficult situation. And if somebody gets a bad injury, there's going to be a lot of comeback and a lot of insurance claims going through, which is not particularly a good thing.
No, because Bundesliga obviously returned at the weekend. I think they've had a bit of a spike in terms of what they'd normally see in muscle injuries, which is no surprise from what you're telling us. But I suppose from players' point of view, yeah, nobody wants to get the virus and things like that. But if a player comes back and tears a hamstring or something like that when they first come back, it's going to be a knock-on effect from being rushed back. Because if UEFA needs to see the Premier League cram games together and all of a sudden you go from no football for 9-10 weeks, even longer, to all of a sudden 2 or 3 games a week, it could cause a few problems.
Oh, it's common sense. I'm a massive believer in keeping things simple. And if you simplify things, you rush the comeback, you're going to have a higher risk of getting injured. And it's quite simple on that fact. The other thing, obviously, is the players' contracts. If you've got somebody that's out of contract, and obviously they've extended it a little bit, but they get a bad injury during that time, it puts them under a massive, I don't know, just an awkward position. Very, very awkward position. And will some players want to give 100%? I don't know. To win the league or to avoid relegation, probably yes. But those middle teams who they're going to be playing against, they'll be a little bit, I don't really want to go into that. I don't want to get injured. I want to, be available to get a new contract here or somewhere else. So there's just so many facts involved.
No, certainly is the case. Well, Dave, it's been great to chat with you about obviously your time at Liverpool and of course the current situation. I hope you're back with the gloves on the touchline at Plymouth before we know it, and hopefully, of course, in League One if that promotion does indeed get confirmed.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and then we'll push on for the next one.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Guy. Cheers.
Enjoyed that. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.